12 to 24 inches of rain hit Bourne, Texas overnight, and water rescues ran through the morning. HRRR model is showing 24 more inches possible across parts of Texas in the next 48 hours. Meanwhile, up to 12 inches of rain could hit Tampa and Cedar Key from a tropical threat. Because what happened in Texas over the last 24 hours genuinely belongs in its own category. A flash flood emergency was in effect for Bourne, Texas overnight with active water rescues ongoing, which means crews were out in boats pulling people from their homes and vehicles through the night. On top of the flooding, a tornado struck San Antonio near Six Flags yesterday. Because security camera footage and dashcam videos captured power flashes from that tornado touchdown, which means the tornado stayed on the ground for several minutes, leaving a debris signature on radar. And as of the latest reports, no injuries or fatalities were confirmed from the San Antonio tornado. But the flooding and tornado threat are not finished yet because another round is already building today. Margaret in Lake Charles is tracking Texas and says she has never seen anything quite like this. Because today the Weather Prediction Center has a moderate risk of excessive rainfall still in effect, which means Kerrville, Uvalde, Junction, and San Angelo are all still in a significant flood risk zone because these same areas have already been obliterated by repeated rounds of heavy rainfall. And if you live in San Antonio, several more inches of rainfall are expected today as well, which means the flooding story in south central Texas is not winding down, it is continuing. Because the upper-level low responsible for this is still spinning west of San Antonio today, and the HRRR model is painting a genuinely alarming picture for the next 24 to 48 hours, which means some pockets near Kerrville and Junction could see another 6 inches or more on top, and there is still a rogue supercell threat. An isolated tornado cannot be ruled out today, because any little supercell developing in the right area could produce a brief tornado this afternoon, which means even as flooding calms slightly, the severe weather threat is not finished today. And tomorrow night into Friday morning, another heavy rain band sets up near San Angelo and Sonora. 12 to 24 inches fell in Bourne, Texas, 24 more possible in 48 hours, San Angelo next. Because here's the good news: by Friday, the overall Texas flooding risk will start to ease. Dale in Toledo is watching the Texas recovery timeline and says Friday looks like a turning point, which means scattered showers and storms will linger, but the extreme training event should end Friday, because that upper-level low is finally forecast to shift slightly east and weaken by Friday afternoon, and that shift will reduce the Gulf moisture feed that has been driving these repeated rainfall rounds, which means Texas gets a breather starting Friday but not a total pass from showers. And over in the desert Southwest, the summer monsoon is also in full swing today, because Arizona and New Mexico will see widespread thunderstorm activity over the next 24 to 48 hours, which means Tucson and Phoenix face 1 to 2 inches of rain from monsoon storms. And a few isolated spots near Tucson could see 2 to 3 inches where terrain focuses rainfall, because the monsoon pattern is running quite active and efficient at pulling Gulf of California moisture inland, which means southern Arizona and New Mexico residents need to watch for flash floods in the washes. And for Texas and the Southwest combined, this is going to be a brutal 48 hours. Now let us talk about the big pattern change coming and why it matters for your Saturday, because right now the jet stream has a significant dip forming across the northeast United States. And as Saturday arrives, that jet stream dip is going to grow significantly larger and deeper. Frank in Springfield is watching this Saturday setup closely and says the wind threat looks very real, because the Rufus model shows a large cluster of thunderstorms developing just north of Toronto Saturday, which means storms fire across Michigan afternoon, then rapidly organize into a significant squall line. And that squall line could produce a pretty widespread and dangerous wind threat Saturday evening, because this wind threat stretches all the way from Springfield and Peoria out to Burlington, Vermont, which means Harrisburg, Scranton, and even Washington, D.C. could see damaging winds during the late evening hours. And this storm system moves offshore during Sunday morning, allowing things to briefly improve, because Saturday temperatures in the low 90s will fuel the afternoon storms before the cold air arrives, which means by Sunday morning, upstate New York and Vermont will feel noticeably cooler and more comfortable. And beyond Saturday and Sunday, another storm system is expected to move into the Midwest by Monday. Earl in western South Dakota says Chicago and Minneapolis look active for severe weather Tuesday, because by Tuesday, the next jet stream dip will allow another round of severe weather to develop, which means Chicago and Minneapolis face a real severe weather threat Saturday and again Tuesday. And Tuesday, the East Coast could also see severe weather develop, though models remain very split, because forecasters are not yet confident on where Tuesday's East Coast storm will track exactly, which means Tuesday deserves careful watching for anyone living across the eastern United States. And Wednesday looks like a relative break as high pressure builds across the Great Lakes. 24 inches possible Texas, Saturday widespread wind threat Springfield to Vermont, Tuesday Chicago, Minneapolis. And now for the other major story, not getting nearly enough attention today, because a massive plume of wildfire smoke from Canadian wildfires is draping the Midwest and Northeast, which means strong upper-level winds out of the north and west are steering that smoke directly south. And the smoke is worst in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and across New York State, because residents in Wausau, Detroit, and even New York City have been reporting serious respiratory impacts, which means if you have asthma or breathing issues, today is a real indoor air quality day. And on Friday, the smoke is expected to push southward into Virginia, Charlotte, and Raleigh, which means Friday will be a bad smoke day for the Mid-Atlantic and parts of the Carolinas. Sandra in Alexandria says Friday will be thick with Canadian wildfire smoke staying inside, because upper-level winds are steering the smoke more toward the east and southeast on Friday, which means Wisconsin could get a brief smoke break late Friday as the plume shifts east. And the AQI will hit dangerous levels today and tomorrow across the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, because wildfire smoke is an evolving situation and the extent of the impact is still changing daily. Comment your city below. Are you seeing wildfire smoke in your area right now today? And here is the part of the forecast affecting the south and southeast in the coming days. Because a large mean high pressure system is building across the southern plains and Gulf Coast region, which means Texas is actually going to flip from catastrophic flooding to brutal triple-digit heats. Because once the upper-level low exits, the ridge builds fast and temps could rocket into the hundreds. Which means Texas flips from 24 inches of rain to potentially 105-degree heat by next week. And that temperature flip for Texas is one of the most dramatic weather reversals in recent years, because the south and southeast will stay hot and steamy well into next week with no relief. Which means while the northern tier catches a break from the heat, the south just keeps cooking. Looking at late July, the pattern remains uncertain, but could get quite active around month's end, because multiple energy waves are forecast to swing through the Midwest near the end of July, which means somewhere near the last week of July we could see another major pattern change develop, and the Ring of Fire setup remains a legitimate possibility from late July into early August. Because when high pressure anchors in the south and low pressure systems ride around its northern edges, which means the next few weeks could feature cluster after cluster of thunderstorms tracking through the Midwest. 24 more inches Texas, Saturday Springfield to Vermont wind, smoke choking Midwest and late July pattern incoming. Because let us now talk about the tropical picture hurricane season does exist in the Atlantic, which means two separate areas for potential tropical development in the Atlantic are being watched today. And the first area is near the eastern Atlantic off Africa with a 10% formation chance, because that Cape Verde wave has a 10% chance of developing over the next 7 days, which means it is worth monitoring, but confidence in development is still quite low at this point. But the second area is more notable. It is positioned right near Florida heading into Saturday, because a cold front crashing south from Canada could cause a low pressure system near Florida, which means there is a low but real chance of tropical development right along the Florida coast. And if anything does develop near Florida, flooding rainfall is the bigger concern, not necessarily the winds, because Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, Daytona Beach, and Spring Hill all face a real flooding rain threat, which means the national blend of models shows 3 to 5 inches near Tampa and Spring Hill. And spots near Tampa, Cedar Key, and Spring Hill could see up to 12 inches of rain, because the Gulf of Mexico is extremely warm and will enhance any rainfall developing near the coast, which means even without a named storm, the flooding rainfall threat for Florida's Gulf Coast is real. And if the system organizes and moves north, Cape Hatteras and Virginia Beach need to watch out, because there is an outside possibility of a coastal storm developing east of the Carolinas next week, which means a tropical storm east of the Carolinas is not off the table, but models have significant uncertainty in exactly what develops and how strong anything would get. And what is most likely is heavy flooding rainfall for Florida, the Carolinas, and the Virginia coast, because a cold front meeting warm Gulf water is very efficient at producing coastal flooding, which means Central Florida should expect 2 to 5 inches of rain from the approaching system. And stay updated daily because this tropical situation is evolving fast and could change significantly. Comment below, are you on the Florida coast, the Carolinas, or the Virginia Beach area? So here is your action checklist based on everything unfolding from Texas to Florida to the Ohio Valley. If you're in the Texas Hill Country, do not drive on any flooded road period. If you are in San Angelo or Sonora, watch the overnight flash flood risk into Friday morning, because another band of heavy rain could set up near those cities before Friday morning gets here. If you are in the Midwest dealing with wildfire smoke, stay indoors and limit outdoor activity today. And if you are in the Ohio Valley or Northeast, Saturday is the day to have a shelter plan, because Saturday's wind threat from Springfield to Vermont deserves the same preparation as any tornado event. And if you're on the Florida or Carolina coast, monitor NWS updates daily as tropics evolve. Tell us below which hazard hits closest to home for you and your city today. And let us know which region you want a deeper breakdown on in the next video. 12 to 24 inches fell in Bourne, Texas overnight, with 24 more possible in 48 hours. Wildfire smoke from Canada is choking the Midwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast with dangerous AQI today. Saturday brings a widespread wind threat from Springfield and Peoria all the way out to Burlington, Vermont. And up to 12 inches of coastal rain is possible near Tampa and Cedar Key from the tropics. 24 inches fall and 24 more coming 12 inches coastal in late July, still not decided. Stay ready.